Welcome, Ashley. Okay, I think it's connecting.
Yeah.
Ashley, you're like a national treasure. You really are. You're a national treasure. Ashley Koff, everybody, is a registered dietitian. She is the best-selling author of this awesome book called Your Best Shot. I don't know if it comes across backwards here,
Yeah. I don't know
but
if mine's backwards or forward, but that's cool. Yeah.
your book is amazing. And it's not I'm not here to just promote your book. I'm here to help people make sense of their metabolic health, to cut through the noise about GLP-1s and BMI, and to just let you take the floor and tell us why, first and foremost, you wanted to tackle this subject as a very experienced and acclaimed weight health expert.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and it's really what brought us together. So, like, my personal story is that it's so not unique to me. It's like everybody's story in some way. But I just battled weight, but I was told I was healthy. So it was always like, you need to manage your weight. So it was like you need to manage your weight, and the way that you do it is you lose weight, and the way you do that is you eat differently or eat less or you exercise more. And I started on that path at 8, and I was not non-compliant. And I was, I had like just an extra belly, but, et cetera. But everyone was missing the signals. I was on antibiotics like all the time. I had ear infections, throat infections. Like I ultimately had my tonsils out. I had skin issues, like all of this stuff. And so I was told that I had a weight issue, but I was also told I like always was like, you're healthy. You have no issue. Or like, if you do, it's an in the moment, take a medication, you're fine. And so the pursuit of optimizing my weight or losing weight or, becoming what society deemed as normal weight made me so unhealthy. What ended up being the pivot there for me was I actually ultimately at like a very rock bottom moment, I talk about this in my book, did a goat's milk cleanse for 7 days because I was just I had tried everything like under the sun, the myth of the non-compliant patient. I was so disempowered, I like fell for it and just like did something random. But I ended up meeting a gastroenterologist who was trained differently. He never asked me about my weight, and he asked me about my antibiotics. And then he asked me, ongoing questions from there. And he said to me, which I think is the most empowering statement ever, is that it's not what you eat or you don't eat. It's that your body didn't have what it needed to run better. And that literally is what made me a dietitian. And I went out there, and for a handful of years, I was like, all right, I got to help everybody with their digestion, because it's obviously if your digestion isn't working, you can't be healthy. And in 2004, I first learned that we have these incretin hormones, and I learned that they're made in the lining of our digestive tract, and we can unpack that. But those were what helped me understand that actually, if we make weight health hormones, the goal isn't weight loss, the goal is weight health. And so that's been, 20 something years for me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental shifting of that frame is not only the right thing to do as in the medical profession,
Yeah.
it's biologically accurate.
That's
So
right.
we have done such a disservice in the medical field for generations. I mean, beyond generations. For We've done so much harm to people by telling them that if their weight is higher than is ideal on a scale, that you have a willpower problem, that you need to eat less and exercise more, and without any sort of specific instructions on A, how to do that, and B, what are the sort of contextual elements in your life that make that operationally very difficult. So the sort of eat less, exercise more, see you next year mantra is alive and well in the medical space. Part of that, as you know, Ashley, is because doctors don't really have time to unpack, if you will, the sort of biopsychosocial elements that go into someone's weight and metabolic health. Part of it also is that we were not trained in medical school to understand weight as merely a data point, a symptom, if you will, sort of a signal, but it's not the whole story. The whole story is what you describe in your book so beautifully. It's what are your genetics? What are your biological factors? What are your hormone levels looking like? What is your social emotional health like? What are your demographics and social determinants of health?
Yeah.
I can have 5 different patients with the same BMI.
Mhm.
and that BMI is high. And all of them will have gotten to that BMI in a different way. Therefore, all of them need a different set of solutions, right? So to say to people, eat less, exercise more is a large part of why many patients don't go to the doctor.
Mhm.
Like, it's actually one of the top reasons for avoiding medical doctors. It induces shame, it induces fear, and then, of course, it induces the sense of, like, I'm a failure. Like, if you can't lose weight because and by the way, my patients who have struggled with weight their whole lives are not lazy. They are people
Yes,
they've done
right.
more work than the
That's
average
right.
person to try to lose weight. They're not
Yes.
non-compliant. They're not and by the way, they're not unaware that they have an issue with their weight. They are people who have been dismissed by the medical profession. They are people who have been shamed by the medical profession, sometimes not intentionally, and who have been disempowered. And so
Yeah.
what your book does and what your story is telling us is that the answers aren't out there, right? The answers aren't like someone else's sort of cleanse or a sort of prescriptive advice. It's really inside you, and you need to own your story and own your understanding of your hormones, and then honestly bring this book to your
To the doctor.
doctor and be like, "Let me educate you." Sort of like we're educating doctors now retroactively on hormone replacement therapy.
Right. Yeah. And they're all hormones. And I'm going to flip it to a space. I don't think I was intending to go here, but I think it's so interesting. I practiced for about 15 years in Los Angeles, and I still work with a lot of individuals, high performance athletes, entertainers, et cetera. What's also interesting is the amount of disempowerment of somebody who didn't have a weight issue. I actually am so grateful because when people say, like, at 52, like, you have amazing skin or you don't like, or I haven't had hot flashes or I haven't I've definitely had my share of stuff. So I don't want to, on that piece. But I'm like, that's because I learned at age 20, at that point, that I had to optimize my digestion and I had to assess my weight health ongoing. Have seen so many patients, men and women, who have said, and who even have said, oh, I'm going to buy the book for and insert overweight or person who has battled their weight. And then when they've heard me talk, they're like, wait a second, I need this book. And I'm like, yeah, because if you haven't perceived yourself as ever having had a weight problem, a total weight problem, you have totally missed the point of your body. Our body and these weight health hormones regulate bone, muscle, fat, hydration, blood sugar, blood flow, cognitive function, inflammation. Like, I'm going to just keep going on. And so what's really interesting is so many individuals who have not battled a belly will show up in their 40s or 50s suddenly with health issues. And they're like, why did this all of a sudden happen? Or they'll say to me, why did my weight all of a sudden, like the same stuff wasn't working? And I said, no, you've been ignoring signals that your body has been sending for decades on that part. So there's a really one of the key things for me here, why it says like it's optimizing weight health. I want us to know, like, nobody gets to opt out of optimizing weight health. We
Right.
all have these hormones.
We all
Yeah.
have, it's like we all have, yes, we all have metabolic health. We all
Right.
have, right?
Right.
Like wherever you are on the BMI scale. So actually talk to me specifically about the data, what we know about the connection between digestion and the GI tract and these sort of weight health hormones.
Yeah. So, and again, this is 2004 for me. And I think for most practitioners, it has been really an education that's only happening in the last 4 or 5 years. Unless you've been working with diabetics or maybe in the obesity medicine space, you were starting to hear about this. But we make these hormones in the lining of our digestive tract. So we have things like called L cells and K cells. They also are different hormones. They're made from peptides, which means they're made from amino acids that come from proteins. So if we just if the two things right there that we're hearing, if I wasn't getting in enough protein and if my body wasn't able to break down that protein into usable amino acids, have those amino acids get everywhere they need to be in the body and have my body be able to create them into hormones, we're all going to have issues with these. And what's really interesting is these hormones, they only stay on for like 2 to 5 minutes. I actually studied that a lot. I was trying to understand. In my book, I call them a switch because I try to create analogies. Like, for me to understand things, that's how I got through school. I was like, okay, what's the analogy? And so I call these motion detectors, so they switch on, they switch off. Why would the body create something that only switches on for 2 to 5 minutes? And then because what its job is to tell other things to go to work. So the hormones we do do know about, insulin and glucagon, the ones like insulin, we've tried so many different ways to figure out how to deal with insulin resistance or how to give insulin to people or like all these different things. Or we do know about leptin and ghrelin. We even hear about leptin resistance today. And, leptin being the one that your body tells your body that you're full, or ghrelin I always learned was like grr, like you're hungry, We know about those hormones, but what we've been missing is that there are hormones that their sole job is to tell those to go to work. Now, the tricky part is not just that they're proteins that have to be formed, but they're made and deployed from the lining of our digestive tract. This was another big aha for me. I always thought about our digestive tract as a tube, and I paid attention to what happens in the tube. I didn't pay attention to the actual tubing, like, what goes around there. And when I learned that there's so much metabolic activity, there's immune health components in there, there's, a lot that's going on there that actually is dictating how our body uses resources and uses and absorbs nutrients, it became really, really key to understand that we insult and we injure by living healthfully. We insult and we injure our digestive tract lining just with the way that society is designed today, but also a lot of the maybe fixes, and they can be great fixes. An antibiotic is a great fix, or a steroid medication, or even things like oral contraceptives or different hormones. And then there are things like I could think about like gluten, or I could think about, ingredients that might be something where you're particularly intolerant to. And then stress, and then alcohol, like there are all these things. And so all of those impact that lining of the digestive tract, in addition to that lining has needs. It needs polyphenols, it needs fibers, it needs certain bacteria. So we have to nurture all of that. And this is one of the reasons that I hope it's the nail in the coffin on weight loss. When we take an approach of taking in less, we actually take a body that was likely suboptimally resourced, and now we further suboptimally, we make that further suboptimal. So I think from a research standpoint, we're actually learning a lot now that we have agonists. Like there was a lot of this that I couldn't talk to people about because we didn't see where GLP-1 went. And now because we have the medications, we can see where it went. But it kind of helps us understand why so many of us, if like somewhere around 9 in 10 Americans aren't meeting the criteria for metabolic health, then at least 9 in 10 Americans have suboptimally functioning weight health hormones.
So it's so interesting, and I love it. We cannot continue this conversation without talking about GLP-1s. What I love about
Yes.
your book, to frame this question I'm about to ask you, what I love about your book is that this is about weight health, not weight loss or weight gain. And by the way, I have lots of patients who need to gain weight. My patient I
Yes.
saw this afternoon, who has
Mhm.
osteoporosis and fell and needs to gain weight for her bone health and for her
Yeah.
metabolic health. Regardless of your weight, you need to focus on metabolic health and weight health. We can't not have the conversation about GLP-1s. You can
Right.
be metabolically healthy without a GLP-1, of course. You
Mhm.
can be metabolically unhealthy with a GLP-1.
Yes.
I sure have seen many patients who take GLP-1s who are lower on the scale,
Mhm.
but they are weak, frail, undernourished.
Mhm.
So the goal with the GLP-1, as I say to patients every day, is not just a number on the scale, it's the totality of your biopsychosocial environment. So
Right.
you have to eat to lose weight, by the way,
Mhm.
if that's your goal, to lose weight. You also have to eat to help metabolize your cholesterol and your blood sugar. So anyway, let's talk about GLP-1s. What is my specific question? What, I'm not going to ask you a specific question. Give me your take on
Yeah.
GLP-1s and how they have changed the landscape of your work as a registered dietitian, because they have really kind of been a big shot across the bow in your industry as it has done to mine.
Yeah, totally. I think they deserve the Nobel Prize, but I think they
Totally.
deserve it for a different reason than most. They are in the shortest amount of time upregulating our understanding of how the body works. So they are biosimilar hormone replacement therapy. So let's unpack that. We know hormone replacement therapy and we know bioidentical. So estrogen, thyroid, insulin, testosterone, we make those. And if we don't have enough of those, we use a synthetic version of them. And those are called bioidentical hormone therapy. Biosimilar hormone replacement therapy is similar, but not identical. And that's important for us to understand. These medications were designed because we learned that we have this 2 to 5 minute hormone, right? It lasts for 2 to 5 minutes. The thesis was, what if 2 to 5 minutes isn't long enough in modern day? What if to repair and to help and do all that, it needs to stay on longer? And so we started off with twice a day injections, then we got to once a day injections, and now we have once a week injections or an oral that works for a day. And when you call it a biosimilar hormone replacement therapy, you understand, and hopefully we remove a lot of the bias that's there. We use it when your hormones aren't working optimally. There could be a variety of reasons, as I talked about. You're not making enough, they're not able to be deployed. Maybe there's problems in the pathways of the signalings get there, or of how they're supposed to get where they need to go to certain receptor sites. So we can use them, but when something is biosimilar, the dissimilarity is what's important. These stay on for an exponentially longer period of time. So that means your body's design is thrown out of balance. Now, it could be helping us rebalance certain things. And I remember Oprah, just recently said in her book, and in some of the interviews around it, I took this at 8 a.m. and by 2 p.m. I was a different person. Exactly. If you don't have insulin in your body, and hopefully you take it in not waiting for 7 hours, but hopefully in the moment where you then put insulin into your body, you're going to feel differently. If you don't have, or you have a lower amount of thyroid or whatever, and you replace it, so you're going to feel differently, and that's amazing. The difference that's going to happen there is when it stays on for a long period of time, we're not metabolically turning off. So here's what I want you to think about. If your electric bill is for a motion detector that goes on 2 to 5 minutes, let's say it goes on 6 times for 5 minutes, you're paying a total of energy costs of 30 minutes. When you go on an agonist, when you go on a semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, you're paying a bill for I left town and I left the light on for a week. So that is not a negative. It could be like, great, the lights were on, nobody came any time of the day, but a lot of things didn't happen and we still have to pay for that bill. So one of the things about the GLP-1 agonist I think is so great is it's showing us, like it's like a light bright. It's showing us all the different places where we have these receptor sites. What it's not yet showing us in the research, because we're still seeing research that quotes percentage, the success of the drug or the value of the drug correlates with how quickly and how high of a percentage of weight loss. Those are not the benefits that we want to be seeing. Like when we see things like liver fat, or when we see, fat loss and muscle gain, et cetera, those are the kind of results we want to look at. But when we look at the GLP-1 agonist, what it's showing us is all the places in the body where we have these receptor sites that previously we've been trying to manage the health without giving it without it being, having that first domino or having that hormone. So that's why I think it's amazing. It's not just upending my business. I think it should be, and very importantly, like all of healthcare. But part of my work is I present to food industry and I talk to them, and there's been some really dumb stuff like labels on foods that are on food packages that are GLP-1 friendly. I'm like, people, food should be GLP-1 friendly, like stuff like that. So, health insurance, I mean, there's all sorts of different things for good and for bad, but boy, are these like this master class in how the body works
They
and what we've
are.
been missing. Yeah.
I'll tell you, and I want to answer Michael Teferi's question because
Oh,
it
good.
really gets at the heart of the issue that we're talking about. Michael, I just want to say real quick that from the clinical angle, I mean, I talk to patients and see patients. I probably see a GLP-1 patient every day of the week.
At least. Yeah.
Um, so there's the biochemical, sort of mechanisms you're talking about, and then there's the sort of real world effects in people's like everyday
Yeah.
lives that are fascinating. So I agree with you, Ashley, that the Nobel Prize should be awarded to the GLP-1 agonists for the reason that they are helping us uncover the
Right.
myriad ways in which metabolic health is informed.
Yeah.
What I find the most interesting and the most gratifying as a clinician to see is the insight people are gathering
Hmm.
and the sort of relinquishing of that like shame narrative they had about food. Now, I am not advertising I'm not on the board of Eli Lilly. I don't get a
Yes.
payback. I don't. I'm just saying
Me
I
either.
don't.
Let's be clear.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Like
right.
I'm
Yeah.
not getting a cut from Novo
Yeah.
Nordisk. I'm simply saying that it's really, really gratifying as a clinician. It's gratifying for the patient who, particularly when they've been told, eat less, exercise more, see you next year, do better, to finally feel and experience the sort of psychological space that is afforded to them between a stimulus and a response. So it's like we've lengthened the distance between the stimulus
Mm-hmm.
of seeing food or being hungry and acting on it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is not just that people are curious intellectually about how that happened, but because that is how we behave every day in the world. And because people have felt so out of control and then they've felt shamed by society. And then, so what's really cool to me is not only that I'm seeing people reverse their type 2 diabetes, reverse their hypertension, reverse their high cholesterol, not always, not perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And people also need to be on, other medications for those metabolic issues separately from a GLP-1. But really the sense of
And nutrition and lifestyle, but like, okay, yes.
and
That's
nutrition
right.
and lifestyle, that
Yes.
goes without saying.
Yeah.
But yes, I am talking to a
Yes.
dietitian. But really the sense of agency people have
Yeah.
over their body and mind. So it's really, to me, the Nobel Prize should be awarded for their ability to help people have a sense of agency over their body and mind. Because guess what? It's not your fault
Right.
that you had a hard time losing weight. Now, that's not to say that there isn't individual responsibility. Like if you go out and binge on ice cream and cake and you don't exercise, like that is your responsibility. I'm
Right.
saying that it's both and. It's both individual habits and a biochemical set of hormones that you really don't have control over. So that's extremely gratifying. Let's answer Michael's question. How
Great.
do I lose weight? Ashley Koff, registered dietitian, when I have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, very common, hyperlipidemia.
Yeah. Thank you. So, first of all, I'd like to encourage you to break up with the desire to lose weight. So, what we want to do is we want to recognize our weight composition. So, losing fat and shifting where fat may be inappropriately deposited, like in our liver, et cetera. We call that visceral fat. Maintaining our bone health and maintaining or building muscle, and then also looking at our water composition. So when we shift the goal, we say like, well, that's your weight is one signal, right? And your thyroid is giving us another signal. So when we have low thyroid, there's often signs that our body is under-resourced or that it's overstressed, that it's being asked to do too much, or there may be other issues. So things that I look into vitamin D, I look into iodine, I look into what's your sleep like, and we'll talk about lipedema in a second. And the answer is yes and no. So I want to be clear on that part. But prior to all of that, I would start with a digestive assessment. The most important thing that we want to understand is what is our digestion telling us, because there's this whole idea out there, and I was certainly taught a lot of it in school, that foods are healthy or not healthy. Like, is a tomato healthy, or is wild salmon healthier than, say, chicken or any of these things? And at the end of the day, our body doesn't check the box as something being quote unquote healthy until it's able to break it down, use it, and use it where it needs to be, right? So the first place that I would be concerned about is that everything that you're dealing with right now is actually a factor of like how has it either been impacted by, or is a root cause the digestive side. So we would start there. Some of the other things we might look at are inflammation and some other things that might be out of balance, and see how we can optimize them. And then with the lipedema as well on that part, we want to understand, so why is my body allocating fat here? Like what's the issue with, and the whole cycle of fat burning in my body? We really need to dive into that. I do start with digestion there as well. And then I definitely will look at inflammation. And inflammation is really interesting because we tend to think we need just omega-3s. There's this like kind of mantra out there, omega-3s, and we need to get rid of anything that could be increasing inflammation. But your body actually has a mechanism in the inflammatory response called resolving inflammation. And what I find more frequently than not is that my patients are not resolving inflammation. I see this a lot with lipedema. And so in that space, which is different than lymphedema, so I want to be clear in case somebody's hearing me from a talking, but I want us to understand that when we see itises and these demas and other things, what I'm looking at is, where is the body not able to do what it's supposed to do? Is it not turning something off? Is it not resolving something? And all of this is not a just you go do it. Yes, I have the playbook for it. And yes, there's the book here, but this is a collaboration with a qualified dietitian like myself and a practitioner for us to say, hey, there might be medications, there might be treatments, and and we need to understand the signals that your body is saying. But in all cases, the biggest takeaway for you is number one, your digestion, and number two, it is not about the amount or what you are eating right now. It's really about us figuring out where your body is suboptimally functioning or suboptimally resourced, and then restoring those resources. That might be food, it might be supplements. It might be that right now your body's not able to turn some of that food into usable nutrients. So long answer, but I hope it helps you get started on that part. Also, I can't give any specific professional guidance, so that was just education here, people. Yeah.
That's right. So I think if we all could have Ashley Koff as our registered dietitian to counsel us, that'd be great. But if you can't, I think reading her book is a good place to start. But I think registered dietitians are an underutilized resource. I mean, so many insurances don't pay for patients. It's sort of like physical therapy, or like these should just be standard, or mental health, right, services, like nutrition and sort of an understanding of what our body needs, separate from what our weight goals may or may not be, is something we should all think about. So I think for anybody who's trying to optimize their metabolism, it would be a good idea to read Ashley's book and also
And I'll
talk to the
share
registered dietitian.
I'll share 2 parts on that. Well, maybe 3, but make them quick. Number 1, my book includes a QR code. So even if you get the book from the library or you're sharing it with a friend, it brings you over to my team. And we do have coaches that are there and people that are trained in weight health. We can't treat everyone for free. I wish we could, maybe someday, but we do have guidance there that can help direct you and help answer some of those questions. The other part, and this is a specific call out to my dad. I come from a long history of doctors. My brother's a doctor, my sister-in-law, my dad. And my niece and nephew actually, at 5 and 8, coined the term. They're like, "You're the backwards doctor." And I love what you're saying there, because that's DR backwards, so RD. But I think that, for a long time, it was always like, well, see your doctor, and then it's a nice to have on the dietitian piece. And insurance has certainly covered it that way. Interestingly, except for in bariatric surgery, you always had to see a dietitian before you could see a bariatric surgeon, like for your insurance to cover it. And one of the things that I think is so problematic in the GLP-1 agonist space is that if insurance is going to cover it, why aren't you requiring a session with a dietitian at minimum? And I know not everyone's trained the way that I am, but having a conversation to identify some of these things is so imperative. So I think we have a lot of work to do, as Lucy and I know, in DC and beyond. But if you're an insurance company listening, like this is creating a problem. It's not just about lowering the prices of these drugs. It's about creating access to the system that optimizes the use of the drugs. Otherwise, we're just going to have expensive failures, and health issues as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That I think nutritionists or dietitians have been thought of as like a nice to have, and also just for people who need to lose weight.
Right.
And that's just that framing is just incorrect. It's not that it's wrong to want to lose weight. It's that what we're trying to solve for is a more complete sort of assessment of your health, not just, targeting a simple number on the scale, which unfortunately the medical profession has done a good job of doing at the expense of people's sort of, you know, sense of agency over their body and mind. What other questions do we have? We've had a couple of, I take vitamin D regularly, much appreciated, of course. Why are insurance companies making it so hard? I've tried everything and they won't approve it. You'd think it would save them money. I'll tell you one thing today. I had a patient who he has a BMI of 35, which is higher than his ideal. It's affecting his liver tests. He has, we call it non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or metabolic associated steatohepatitis. And he has coronary artery disease. It's coronary disease, which is the sort of accumulation of cholesterol plaque in the coronary arteries. So we know that Wegovy is FDA approved for coronary artery disease and a BMI over 27. So I submit that prior authorization today. It was like 9 this morning. My secretary comes into my office. She's like, they denied it. What? So that's crazy. So Paige, my awesome assistant, realized that they denied it because they didn't read the second diagnosis. They just read the weight. And yes, it's not approved for weight loss alone. So she resubmitted it with the coronary artery disease on top. I swear AI is reading these prior authorizations and then just stinging people. So I said to Paige, this is just anecdote, but I think it is an emblem of our time. I said to Paige, imagine all of the doctor's offices all around the country who don't have a page,
Yeah.
who don't have someone to see, aha, and they don't
Mhm.
have a me to be like a bulldog trying to get these
Yes.
things covered for the right reasons. So we resubmitted it, we appealed it, and it got approved at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
But that takes time, that takes effort, and no one has time. And so I guess what I'm saying is, everybody already knows you need to be an advocate for yourself in the healthcare system. Arm yourself with the information about why these medications exist and what they are FDA approved for. And if your doctor says it's not covered, but it should be covered, then go on like ChatGPT and write your doctor a nice note and say, here's why I think it might be covered and submit these codes.
And here's how you can submit it. Yeah. And I will say, like, because I'm very, it's so hard when you're just like in the middle on these. Like, everybody wants you to be pro or against. Like, are you pro or against the medication? And somebody said to me, well, what about these like online places where you can buy the medications? And I said, well, again, like 2 or 3 concerns. One concern is I had a patient who took it, who they had added a B vitamin in there, and she got
Right.
really sick, and she didn't need that B vitamin in that amount, and it conflicted with other things she was taking, and so that was really problematic. The second thing is, like, even if you're quote unquote seeing a doctor, you're not seeing your doctor, and I think that unless it's set up that way, so I want to acknowledge that, because there are a couple of systems in that way. And so, but if you're like seeing Lucy and there's a page and you're seeing me and you're whatever, and what we just need is for you to have access to the medication, like then that might be an okay way for us to use this. And so that's like, that can be a workaround.
That's
But
right.
I think the other piece that we also have to recognize, like I had a woman who told me that her 17-year-old son used his fake ID. Like, I think of what I use my fake ID for. This is like interesting. He used his fake ID to go on and he bought testosterone and GLP-1 because he was too skinny. Listen to this, too skinny, but was worried about his cholesterol. This kid was like, is smart, like, had heard that from the doctor. And I think what it was, it wasn't too skinny. He was had the excess fat, but he also didn't feel that he had the muscle. So he went ahead and he started, without her knowing, he started taking testosterone and also taking GLP-1. Thank goodness she knew, she picked up on the signs, but he was suicidal, and it was because he was on another medication that this interacted with. So I think we have to be really careful. Like, we cannot, like, I'm mad at the insurance companies, like, and I'm so grateful for the Pages of the world. And I think the other part is, you are paying in your office, not just for you, not just for somebody to go to send this out to the insurance companies, but then also for a page. And sometimes people will come back to us and say, Ashley, like, why do you charge $300 for this? Or why do you charge? And I'm like, because behind the scenes, in order to get you the care that you need, and not with insurance not covering it, I have to work 5 hours for your 30 minutes. Sometimes I don't,
100%.
on that part. So I think it is all so broken, but when you think about how you're going to allocate your cash that you're going to spend, I always think of budgeting as finances, time, and emotional energy.
Oh
And
my
so,
God, you and I speak the same language. Those are
right?
the
It's
those
like
are the,
so
those are the finite
important.
resources, right?
Yes, yes. So we have to consider, like, the most important conversation you could have with your practitioner, me or Lucy, is let's budget this. Let's look at the next year. What are we going to be able to do? And I think that's going to be, really important for patients moving forward.
I want
Yeah.
to say also just a comment on the sort of online
Mhm.
companies that are dispensing GLP-1s, like sort of out of context of the person's whole health.
Yeah.
So I understand why people want to do that. I understand. I really do. But first of all, the cost has come way down,
Yeah.
even from a year ago, so that even if you go through your own doctor, you can get these medicines, self-pay.
Right.
Because Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk both have their own
Vials and
pharmacies,
yes, yes.
pharmacies in-house. Surprise, it's the
Hmm.
United States of America. So with a prescription, you can get them at lower cost. But secondly, this goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, Ashley, that those companies tend to, not all, but they
Hmm.
tend to frame the problem that we're solving as a number on the scale.
Yes.
So their therapeutic target is a number on the scale. The therapeutic target in my world, when I'm talking to somebody about metabolic health, is sure one piece of the puzzle is the number on the scale. It's also what is their muscle fat ratio, what is
Hmm.
their hemoglobin A1C, what is their cardiac CRP, what is their lipid profile looking like, and then what does their life look like when
Yeah.
they're
What's their
absolutely suppressed?
joy, right? Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
their life look like when they
Yeah.
don't crave, sugar anymore, and how is this meshing with their everyday experience of being alive and needing to eat? So when you're centering the problem as solely the number on the scale, you run the risk of doing real harm. I have seen no less than 10 patients in the last 2 years who have woken up accidentally a disordered eating problem because of the
Yeah.
GLP-1s. So I have a patient who, I won't go into great detail because I don't wanna, but who was in remission for years from a restrictive eating disorder, and
Mhm.
just taking this medication, not through me,
Right.
it woke that up, and she's very ill. And I
Yeah.
just think the book I love, I mean, I'm writing a book, but
Yay.
it's not, but I'd like to write a second book called Just Because We Can Doesn't Mean We
Oh
Should.
my gosh. Foul.
The
Foul.
American
Yeah.
medical system gone awry when it's so broken, people have to take it into their own hands, and then
Mm,
people call me or call their, other doctors saying they already have the diagnosis. They figured out what they need, and they're like, I'm calling for this. I want
mhm.
testosterone and a GLP-1. So it's not about my ego to say that I'm just not we're not the Cheesecake Factory, to say that, like, let's solve the right problem, right?
Right.
Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because the solution to complex problems is complex,
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and it's so, like, I mean, I sit in there, I'm like, one of the things that, like, I work on with people, it's, like, so simple, is, like, is what you're eating, your bites or your sips, are they delicious? And somebody's like, "Why are you even asking me that?" Like, again, isn't that a nice to have? And I'm like, "No, because in the name of weight loss, we were told to eat healthy food." I mean, I was heating up Jenny Craig containers like this that were so not delicious. And there's bars and shakes and all this stuff that people are having now that are so not delicious. Deliciousness is your tongue and your smell and your eyes, but your body is actually designed with, there are GLP-1 receptors on your tongue to send messages to your brain so that when your brain gets satisfied, it then tells you via other hormones, it tells your body to feel full. Otherwise, if we don't if we don't have deliciousness here, we try to get to a satisfaction point by consuming more so that we feel full. That would be like putting more gas in a tank to be like, okay, like I'm just going to keep filling up the gas when I have an issue with an oil problem, or like when I need air in the tires or whatever. Like, this is just so wrong on that part. So I think that, like, when we don't work with somebody who actually understands why we're making the choices, it's so easy. We see it on social media everywhere, in doctors' offices, like, et cetera, in our dietary guidelines. These foods are healthy. They're at the top of the pyramid. This is at the bottom. No, like, it really is an operational question of, does your body have what it needs at optimal levels to do everything that it needs to do? It has it when it needs it, where it needs it, and is it able to use it? Those are the questions that we answer. And I think that that's such a different framework than, centuries, but at this point, decades at least of the information that we have.
absolutely. And I just want to talk briefly, and then I'll let you go, Ashley, about this w- sort of false dichotomy we have when we are talking about weight and body size, right? On the one hand, we have people on this side of, sometimes it's the political aisle, saying that, weight is just preordained, it's genetics, you don't have any control over it, it's, a result of, generational trauma, and, so be it. And then you have people over here on this side saying it's individual responsibility, like, get your act together, which is kind of what the framing of the new USDA food pyramid
Mm.
was. It was kind of like, if Americans could just eat better and get their act together, we'd all be better off. The truth is obviously in the middle.
Mhm.
The most interesting insight that I see patients having on the GLP-1s is something that I will have said to them for maybe 20 years, but they don't want to take this risk. You need to actually eat to lose weight. You need to eat more to lose weight.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I had a nickel for every single patient whose mechanism by which she or he kept on extra weight was simply because they fell into a pattern of vague kind of restriction during the day, and then the sort of hunger at night, overeating at night, waking up not hungry, and then doing that all over again, I would be, I don't know, I'd be Oprah.
Yeah.
My point is that one of the powerful insight that people get when they're on GLP-1s is that they actually have to eat. First of all, if you don't eat when you're taking a GLP-1, you feel like a sour stomach.
Mhm.
You feel constipated, you feel sick, you can feel weak, you can pass out. Like, this all has to be monitored. But when people give themselves permission, like they've not before because they were afraid of gaining weight because they were told eating equals weight gain, then they actually start to lose weight. So what's beautiful is to see my patients who have been kind of vague restrictors and then overeaters at night start to relinquish that narrative because they don't fear it anymore. They're eating breakfast, they're having protein, they're having healthy fats, they're having carbs. When carbs has been such a bad word for so long, they're eating lunch. They're eating protein, they're eating fiber, they're eating healthy fats, they're eating grains, and then they're eating a smaller dinner and they don't crave the alcohol as much. They wake up hungry and they're losing weight. And that's how someone can get off the GLP-1.
Mhm.
That is how I'm seeing patients taper off the GLP-1s because they've given themselves permission to do what society and their own body says told them they can't do. Because for so long, they were restricting and then overeating at night, restricting in the day, overeating at night. There's sort of this moral kind of like, you know, I've been in that place too in my life. When I was in
Mhm.
college, I was like a restrictive eater. And it feels like it's a control, right? But
Mhm.
guess what? If you're human, you need to eat. So the levees break 5 o'clock, and then you overeat. My point is that if I had one wish for, you know, metabolic health and American healthcare, it's for people to have a sense of agency over their body and mind. I mean, that's a tall order. But to the extent that the GLP-1s help enlighten us about what it takes to actually be healthy, and that eating lunch is sometimes a better intervention than another diet.
Mhm.
I think these medicines are very, very extraordinarily effective teachers about, you know, how we walk through life and how we eat and behave and relate to food.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the reason for, like, a better system around them, because when you're having these awakenings, it's not linear. So, what I'm
Right.
also experiencing with a lot of my patients on these is, they're unpacking trauma. People in their community are unhappy with them, people in their home are unhappy with them. I had somebody who, broke up with her doctor because the doctor said, "Well, look, honey, it's been 3 months and you haven't lost any weight," even though I've sent note after note. Her family was not okay with her losing weight. And also, her therapist, thank goodness we were working with her therapist, was there for realizing that as she was unpacking weight, she was unpacking a lot of childhood trauma. And I don't know where the family relationship and the community and those things are going to play out, but this is not a linear path. And it's not just as much as it's not about a total number on the scale. It also isn't about like you are successful if on this medication you're losing fat. Like this is a, as you just went through beautifully, this is an agency of understanding how your body operates, and it's unpacking where you've maybe made choices from a disempowered space, and sometimes making new choices from an empowered space,
That's it.
comes up in this, and it's really, really interesting. And I think the final piece on that is, you do not know who is out there using these medications or is not using them. And even if you do know that someone is using that medication, how dare you judge them for that choice? And I think society right now, there are a lot of healthcare practitioners, there are a lot of people, and I get that they might be coming from a place that they feel uncomfortable. But that is their own discomfort with their own weight story that they're feeling discomfort with. If somebody around them becomes, is a different body size or it's different health or is making different choices. And so there's a lot of disruption that these medications are bringing forward.
Totally.
And again, that's the Nobel Prize. Like that's the story that we're
That's
telling
the
here.
story. And
Yeah,
the sort of the ease with which we judge other people's bodies, and particularly
yeah,
women's bodies, and the ease with which we want to police people's body size and decisions about their health is stunning. And I think it's uncovered that as well. And I'm actually quite grateful because I think it's time
me too.
we reckoned with how we talk about other people's bodies, how we talk about other people's food choices and choices to begin with. Because, the final thing I'll say is, um, acceptance is a superpower, right? I'm
Yeah.
not great at it. It's a process, but accepting the things you can't control.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's your metabolic health. Sometimes it's other people's comments about your body. Sometimes it's, a genetic predisposition to diabetes. But there's a lot of agency that there is out there. There's a lot more agency. There's a lot more control you do have. And when you relinquish control over the things you can't control and stop
Hmm.
spinning and, allocating brain space, that precious resource to things you can't control, then it opens up a world of agency. And that's what I said on the beginning of this call, Ashley's a national treasure. I mean that. You're a great communicator. You're very smart. You're
Thank
evidence-based,
you.
and you're helping people make sense of very thorny issues that have
Mm.
sometimes plagued them for decades. And I think it's important work, and I really appreciate you talking with me. I can't wait to talk with you next week live in DC at
I
our
know.
event.
And so I'm so excited. I think for me, the greatest gift, I mean, there was a bit of vulnerability. I share my own personal story in this book, but the greatest gift of writing this book at this time and space is the people that it's bringing me together with, whether it's the people in the audience, whether it's people on stage. We are creating this change. So if you personally are sitting right now in a moment of disempowerment, please reach out, because that is the opportunity for us to help you. And I can't wait for your book tour. So I'm
I
so
can't wait.
excited.
Can't wait. Yeah, my
Yes.
book comes out
Cannot
August
wait.
11th. It's
Yep.
called Beyond the Prescription: A Doctor's Guide to Taking Charge of Your Health. And it's importantly, it's not prescriptive. It's not a do as
Right.
I say. It's a here's how to reframe
Yeah.
your problems and your questions to get what you need out of our fragile system. And, of course, we all want wellness, but the wellness
Mhm.
industry has lots of landmines. Anyway, Ashley, thank you for joining
Thank
me. And we'll
you.
see you next week in person. And
Yes.
thank you to everyone
Yes.
for joining us today. And I'll send this out on my social.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so
Take care,
much.
Ashley.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect.